I'm not going to see it. We're going to talk about my favorite subject because I don't have a favorite. As you can imagine, for a moderator like me, it's like a blessing to have so many favorite subjects. But we're going to talk now about the subject which is supposed to be the main subject of the innovation stage. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, and I'm very pleased that we are looking at a subject now that we haven't addressed on stage here yet. We're going to talk about achieving market intelligence, and AI can help us here too to achieve market transparency relatively quickly. Who should we who should we look to? What could the target groups be? And I'm glad that we have three guests here for a roundtable discussion about what solutions we have, what possible approaches, and therefore welcome with me. I'll begin with Timo Goretzky, Chief Revenue Officer of Orderfox. Timo, come on up on stage. Then we've got user side, Tobias Trautmann, co-CEO of Vollmer Werke. Tobias, nice to have you here. Timo, yeah, go over there, sure. And we have Martin Engels, Chief Sales Officer of Chiron Group SE. My ex-counterpart, hi. Have a seat. Timo, we were talking before this discussion, and I think it would be very important for you to briefly introduce this subject to us. What are we talking about here today, and why is it such an important subject? Thank you, Sven. Well, the subject is one that is very similar for many in the industry. In technology terms, we are moving forward. The changes in the machinery, well, if you pay more, you get more quality. You pay a little less, you get a little less quality. But if you look at the markets, they're increasingly complex. Supply chains are breaking away and so on and so forth. And the data across markets is very fragmented. We're still using Excel spreadsheets to find out where what is happening. And AI can help us do much more. But we're not using that yet. And we want to talk today about how, using different AI applications, we can run different strategies to find out who I should sell to. Where are my potential customers? Where are my customers? What are my customers doing? What do my customers want? Martin, question for you, sales expert here up on stage. How do you see the current situation in the machine tool industry? And maybe look at the international level, because when we talk about AI, it's not just Germany. We can't just look at that. I think there's maybe more transparency elsewhere. What's your opinion of the situation in Germany and abroad? Well, we have to actually be positive normally, but I'll be straightforward. It really is immensely challenging. I don't think anyone here at the trade show can talk about growing business this year. We have more and more international challenges this year in Europe compared to Germany. Maybe it's even more challenging. But overall, it's a very difficult year, and I think everyone here in this building and in other buildings at the trade show are facing the challenge of setting up a strategy for the next 10, 15 years. And for me, the sales organization plays a key role. And how am I going to integrate AI to become more efficient, to achieve marketing intelligence, which in the past I tried to do with direct sales, a dealer organization, and with the famous Excel spreadsheet. And for me, it means I need an autonomous level at the very top of my funnel, the funnel that I use then to generate the orders, and that's got to be completely autonomous using AI, and it should pre-generate leads for the next level. And maybe we could talk more about that in a minute. Yes, we will. Tobias, what about your changes, or what are your challenges? Are they the same as what Martin said? Yes, definitely. And there is a special subject with regard to sales that he mentioned. I'd like to support what he said. To go hand in hand with marketing automation. Basically, all of the information that we have here, view of the market, competitors, our own product, the needs of customers, this has got to all be brought together using different tools. And in the past, we salespeople automatically knew how to do these things if you were in the industry for a long time, but so much is changing so quickly now that we don't even have time to train our people so that they can always put together the same package and use the entire toolbox for customers. And as you said, well, we have all of these puzzle pieces, and Genie AI is one piece of the puzzle, but there are many tools, and we've got to focus on having a clever connection between all these tools to continue to work in the funnel. And then apart from that, to get back to your question, to do that not just in sales and marketing, but to do that in the whole company. When you develop software, you can also use tools that give you more speed. That doesn't mean that you don't need development engineers tomorrow, but you will use them where it makes sense, where they can create value for me, not just to do coding for coding's sake. And this happens everywhere in all divisions. Well, I went through the transformation, sales and marketing 20 years ago. Compared to today, I think we all know that that's significantly different now. But Timo, how did you have this idea? What are the subjects that people approach you with? Well, the idea is this. For anyone in sales and marketing, you come in, you want to know what's the total addressable market, how big is it? Now, our industry, the machine tool industry, was kind of spoiled because of automotive industry customers. And okay, this has not disappeared, but it's changed in the past few years, and the industry has a hard time changing to it, nevertheless trying to place its product into the market. What we've done or attempted to do is this. We had to say, okay, what do we have out there? How many customers do machining? How many do work with the lathes? How many do EDM and so on and so forth? What machines do they use? What industries do we supply what products to? So we aggregate all the information available on the internet, and we don't put it into an Excel spreadsheet. We put it into a vertical and integrated spreadsheet, as it were. We vectorize our database so that we always have the point of view of the individual person asking the question when looking at the database. You talked about sales. Okay, what about product development? Let's say you've got a northern Italian market. They don't need 5-axis milling machines. They only need 4 axes. And if 90% of the applications the requirements there could be met with a 4-axis machine, the data is there. We've got to start using it. Now, with Genie, I can't be all alone doing this, and with the data we supply, we have to have a strategy, a concept in companies where it's very clearly stated. We now, today, use data, not yesterday. We use data now. One part of it is this. And of course, you've got to use your own data too. I can't forget that. Tobias just mentioned that. It's got to be one piece of the puzzle. And of course, there are many pieces. Martin, important question. We've heard about data. Let's talk about what you were mentioning. What is it used for? And actually, you've got to be able to tap into know-how, getting market knowledge in order to use a system. Anyone can offer a fancy tool. That's no problem. But how did you proceed and how do you use it? Well, first of all, it's important to just begin. In the last 2.5 years, where I was working as an independent contractor in this field, well, I think there was a paralysis. People had a hard time working with this simple case CRM system or my customer database, no matter what it looks like. And then you look at the potential in your database and look at Genie in the database. It's a simple case, so you can recognize how good your basic information about the markets is. And I can select a market where I think that I'm quite familiar with it, and then I compare the data. And my experience with Genie is that it's very simple then to get started in a discussion and come up with a case. And then building on that, you've got to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to integrate it into my daily work? How can I use a marketing campaign so that I can select target groups, not a target group from my database, but to go and look at and decide on specific criteria. You could go into the details there, but I'd begin with a simple case, not so complicated. In my experience, a lot of companies stop there. And my only reaction is, I don't understand it. And these are the things that we're already using at Chiron with other tools too. And now definitely we are going to delving into more details. Micromachining, watches, medical industry. And this is a target group where we're not really at home. We're coming more from the field of automotive. Now, we don't want to spend 2 years finding accounts with your typical field force, sales people from the past. We don't have that much time. We've got to take a different path. Tobias, what about you? Is that your experience the same? And then I have a question for both of you, because you are the ones forging ahead, or, well, you have the responsibility. You're saying it's clear, it's necessary, that's one thing. But we don't have to talk about how you, of course, then have to have a sales team implementing this. But what's your experience here? Well, I can confirm that. We too are a solution provider, more than 36 different machine models. We have a really broad product portfolio, and now there's huge complexity. We're talking about laser machines, we're talking about eroding, grinding. There's a huge portfolio, bandwidth of technologies, and our salespeople have got to cover that at the front end, and this is the point. We develop, I think, like 300 different new features per quarter, small solutions, mechanical, electrical, software. But if you just think about that, what does a typical German machine maker do? What's in our DNA? We develop, we come up with new technical solutions, and every machine, even if it's a standard, is still different. And how can you succeed in ensuring that this know-how, this added value for customers, is available to customers around the world? And when we see a customer has a problem, it's available immediately. Because otherwise, I know maybe I have the solution internally, but how can I find the right source? And this is what we've got to do, bring all this together so that in the future we can be successful. And as Martin said, if you look at what's going on, well, markets are hugely challenging for all of us in this subject, that people have got to have time normally to learn about things. Well, we don't have that much time anymore. That's what it's about. Teamwork. Martin said that. And Tobias, you emphasized that. Martin, you talked about areas which are new for you. If you're coming from automotive in the past, you may be focused on that, and now you want to diversify and go into different areas. Well, you mentioned product development. Tobias, you mentioned how you can offer an existing solution, but really it's about what customers want. You said that. What does a system offer, a comparable system offer today? A company such as Vollmer might say, okay, maybe we've got to reposition ourselves for new verticals. How do you do that? How do you proceed? Well, ideally, we begin with what Martin said. Okay, I just happen to know this, and is this exactly what the market needs, or has something changed in the recent past? As a rule, in product development, you usually have longer cycles. You've got a machine for everything. So ideally, I look for the market for my product. And there you can achieve efficiency. As Martin said, at the top of the marketing funnel, you put in companies that have a real use case for my machine. I don't have to go talk to somebody who might say, well, that's not something for us. I already know it ahead of time. So in my marketing and sales automation, I can use lead scoring using data we get from Genie or data we get from someplace else. And I can say, okay, somebody's registered on my homepage, or I'd like to see that here at the trade show. Let's have a look. Can I, or should I spend so much time with that person? But let's say aerospace, defense, these are top subjects here. And if I want to move into that space, well, they're not going to come knock on my door. I've got to check and see who exists there. And maybe I can't talk to all OEMs or Tier 1, but what about the subcontractors that are still there? Who are they? And in the last 10 years, maybe I wasn't that interested in that, so I do a search and I go in with that, and then you can set up your funnel like that. And then in marketing, you have the individual challenge of talking to these companies. You don't have to tell to people my spindle speed is highest if the weight of the machine is crucial, so that you have the least amount of vibrations. So using the information that you get with market research tools like Genie to put into CRM, you can make it so efficient when you talk to them that the person listening to you knows right away, I understand that person. I haven't even said anything, but he knows what I need. I'll get back to that sales and marketing in a minute, controversial. But first of all, a question for you. We're talking about information. Don't misunderstand me. I'd like to hear about this. Yesterday we talked about automotive industry, data spaces. Where do we get this data? Because if you don't feed data in, well, you can do Google research. Ultimately, the result will be the same. All kidding aside, you talked about aerospace, defense. How does the data get into the system? Because otherwise, you can't benefit from it. Well, you could say if I had 1 million people doing internships. I could do it myself. Monday you start, Tuesday people get used to it, Wednesday's half of the week, and then it goes downhill from there. So the information from people is sometimes corrupted. AI does it better. The first source of data is the internet. Why should I search elsewhere? First, there's so much information there. It's fragmented, but I, as a person, would have a hard time gathering all that. For that, we use AI. So we've got a very sophisticated process to aggregate the data off the web. And here's the point. It's not copy and paste. We go through the home pages, and we have a look at the home page, like Martin or Tobias would look at it. I see, okay, there's a picture of the machine, and AI can use image segmentation or image classification to find out what kind of machine that is, even if it's not described. Is it a 5-axis processing center? Is it a Miltron system? Does it have unveil control or Siemens control? And this is a subject we were talking about previously. Did they even have automation? And how big is that building? What parts did they produce there? And all of that is aggregated, checked for correctness. There are other agents, AI agents that do that, and it ends up in a data graph. And this data graph has more and more data going in. 24/7 there's data going in. And AI always works with probability calculation, so the data is always just as good or just as bad. Martin, now I have a heretical question. Now, if everyone uses this, and that's the challenge, then you're back to Salesforce or product development that reacts more quickly. So how have people responded to that? How do people use that? And you realize that you still have to keep speed up really high, otherwise the system doesn't help you. Well, I can see that quite easy. The speed has been so low for many years, I'm not worried about it. What we do overall in marketing and in sales and in use of the tools, I think we are far behind what we could do. We're just talking about one small component here of a fully automated lead generation funnel in which conventional sales and marketing plays a key role. I haven't said much. I would have preferred to interrupt because it's not a question of discussing with sales. I wouldn't ask the salespeople. If I put fried chicken on that person's desk, you can ask whether he'll eat it or not. But this is not something to discuss. If you don't use these tools nowadays, you're going to disappear. You'll vanish. You'll have to have them to stay in this top league. And so my answer is, if you don't do it, you're gone. That's what we think at Chiron. We're not perfect anywhere, but we've got certain starts and approaches, and it's about the whole organization, because a tool that you use to gather data will only mean that you've got more data. You've got to do something with that data. And therefore, it's like what Tobias said previously. We've got to be incredibly fast in using the information that we get from our teams, our R&D, our product management, and then use that to go to market. And this field is so complex. You've got to be incredibly fast in going to market with what you've got. You've got to find the right market group. At the same time, you've got to push content that you can't generate manually anymore either. And for all of these areas, well, and then you have to start activities on the basis of all that too. At the same time, for that you need autonomous processes, because no people can do all of this and do all the coordinating. So that's got to be completely autonomous and frictionless. Now, I'm not familiar with any machine tool company that's achieved that yet. And it's difficult, too, to combine all of these modules with each other. A year ago, it would have been automation tools with which I linked together different AI elements, and now it's AI agents. And who's got time in their daily activities to do that? In the last 2.5 years, I've maybe been tinkering with this a little bit, but that was actually not something that led to anything practical. And this has got to now be transformed in companies. And another thing I wanted to interrupt about was this. We shouldn't stop doing one thing to start doing the next. I've been at the trade show for 3 days. Today's the 4th day. I found more projects than we find with our salespeople in our daily activities because I went around to all of these booths here. How you're going to replace that? I don't know, because you'll still need networking, but it can be supported by analysis of data that's available. And there's another nice case. I don't want to mention the company, but one of our customers that is active in automotive around the world came to see us at our booth, and they said, okay, we're not going to invest in automotive here anymore at this site. We're in energy now. And then I started asking, where do you invest? And they said, well, that's one of our suppliers. And I said, well, okay, where is the supplier? And he said, the supplier is in the U.S. And I said, who can I ask in the U.S.? And he said, I don't know. I don't even understand our own organization. Now, if the customer can't understand his own organization, it's hard for our salespeople. But I think it's possible here. There's a possibility here for a customer who's active globally. And maybe I can have Jeannie help me and find out about that organization. I said a lot, but now it's time for me to stop. I'd like to say something there. That's the point. I think if you look at things, well, a salesperson, they have a very special character. We know salespeople that are good at talking, at selling, good at connecting with people. But in order to do good and successful sales, well, it's like an iceberg. That's only the 10% coming out of the water. And I think it's going to be ever more difficult and more important to perform well in everything that's under the water, the 90% there. Now, our salespeople aren't necessarily the people who go sit down in the basement in the evening and use Google and Genie and go through all the Excel spreadsheets and do cold calls and check things and ask about scheduling an appointment and so on. They want to have everything presented to them on a silver tablet. They want to get out of the car, go knock on the door because they have an appointment, and then they perform their show. And that's what they should be doing. Of course, they should be technical advisors. They have to do their show, but we want to convey technical content too. And therefore, I think that's why it's so incredibly important. We've got all these tools out there. They exist. We do continuous scouting and tool check, and every 1, 2, 3 months we try to do that. It's crazy if you look at what's on the agenda, and it's hard to even penetrate what all of these tools can do. But you can try to understand things, and networking, talking to one another, who's tried what, and then slowly, and I agree completely with Martin, we're all at the very, very beginning. But if we don't begin now, well, the few that are already doing the low speed in the market, they'll speed away if we don't do it too. Tobias, let me ask you this follow-up question. You always have to have an approach, a start. That's what you said. You've got to start doing something. So where are you at Vollmer? What are you already using now? What's used in your daily business? What's the current status? Well, it's the basics everyone's talking about. Everyone's talking about ChatGPT. Everyone's talking about Copilot. There are different models. Usually they're free, and I can just talk about our company. If you analyze that, you realize in the entire company you don't have any pay models. Everyone is using a free account. You've got then the data protection issue, a huge issue. What is everyone doing? Well, it's typically German. The managing director is you put a lid on it just to make sure you don't have any vulnerable points. So that's a lid goes on it. Now, we bought these and implemented these models, and we said to our people, anyone who wants to can get a license. We'll buy them, we pay for them, and we'd be pleased to do so. And we say, play with that. Try to do these different things that you can. And, okay, I'll get 10 licenses for Copilot, 10 for ChatGPT or Mini or whatever. And we said, no, it's not for 10 people. It's for everyone. We've got a huge test base. We didn't even think so many people would want to do this. And then what we say is, okay, we want one person to use both systems for their daily work because they'll have to understand that each system is different. In Copilot, you can generate great text or do response emails or check contracts. With the other tool, ChatGPT, you can compare data tools and do analyses. And just this is something that's got to be started. We do the same thing with coding and development. We're really in our infancy here, but we want everyone to have a feeling about what this is all about. People talk about it, but if you you ask specifically how often do you use that every week, when was the last time you generated an image with that and how did you do it? Well, is it about uploading an image and say to AI, to ChatGPT, change it a little bit for me? Well, that's where it starts. You've got to understand how it works. You'll get an image, but it's not necessarily what you want. You've got to add some text, and you say, change the background from blue to green, and so on. And then within a millisecond, you get exactly what you want, because otherwise, you'll go through 25 loops, and then you'll stop, because that's not the image you wanted anyway. So there are simple mechanisms. It's like in school. You've got to relearn how to write, how to deal with tools like this, and you've got to overcome people's fears. They're not there to take away people's jobs. They're there to secure people's jobs so that tomorrow, in the future, we'll still be competitive so that we can generate this added value. So both of you, you and Martin, are describing the development process that I went through in the last 2 years too. Timo, question for you. It's like you, Tobias, you start playing around with things and then you set something up so that you don't get just the data. And that's the next thing for salespeople. You don't want to compare 15,000 data records yourself. Why not? Well, I think everyone's a little bit lazy there. At least I was, to be frank. So what happened for me is this: the storyline, Tobias, what most of you talk about. You can have that and go approach the customer. You don't just say, "I have a great machine for you." I begin with the customer's need and then build my story on that basis. So this is the result that I have found today, and the success is sensational. And I'm doing something much less complex than you are. So, Timo, what's the situation when you use Genie? You get the story or do you get the data? Because then I'd say, Timo, okay, next step. As Tobias said, people want things on a silver tablet. And actually, I'd prefer to have that chicken, the fried chicken. Well, that's a good question. We set up our database and then we decided to put an agent that can use it. Because otherwise we would have been back to the Excel spreadsheet with filters, maybe A, B, and C. Filter A, B, and C. There are people who want that, but we selected the multi-agent approach. In other words, there are different agents that operate on the same database with the chat interface, like we're used to. So the knowledge worker or the salesperson don't have to be explained how to use this. It's an input window. We're a certified Microsoft partner. You can use it in Teams, in Copilot, or standalone, and Shadow IT too. So if Fulma says, okay, we're using Copilot, then you can seamlessly integrate that. You just add the Genie agent, you ask your question, and you get your normal process. And then you can also say, now you go get the data from Genie. Have a look at what additional information is available. And then linking these things means that the silver tablet is more realistic. No, it's not. We can't present everything on a silver tablet. Just because you have the data doesn't mean you can stop doing sales and marketing. That's not what we do for you. We'll help you become more efficient in doing this. But you've got to get started using the right data to be more efficient, quicker, and maybe first, or one of the first three, with maybe a silver-coated tablet, silver-plated. Not complete silver, but we can do that already today. Okay, let me give you some feedback. When I saw this subject, I was actually a little bit annoyed because it was only half an hour. I would have liked to have a whole hour, but okay. We should talk about sales for more than just a half an hour. But in any case, thank you very much for your insights. We've got just one more minute, so maybe I can ask just one more question. It might be a bit hackneyed, but let me say this. We heard about the status very clearly. Nice discussion of that. It's not just wild dreams. So, Martin, one statement from each of you, brief. What would you like to see in 1-2 years? Where would you like us to be so that we can work with that in 1-2 years? Well, we should stop with these rules, regulations, and guidelines. We're guidelining ourselves to death with data protection guideline and guidelines about this and that. In Europe, we'll never make digital headway if we keep on doing what we've been doing so far. We've got to get things done. We forgot how to do that. If we don't just start doing things, we'll not succeed at anything. I can underscore that 100% and then have the courage to try things out. You can say it's really complex, but if you don't start playing and don't have the courage to just try it and learn by trying, it doesn't have to be a perfect design, perfect automation from day one. It's enough to get 2 steps automated, and the next day you'll sit down and you say, okay, what about the next 2 steps? How can I do that? That will mean that we're really good. Well, give your teams market research budgets. Give the decision makers a budget so that they can use to experiment. It doesn't have to be a huge budget, but just get started, please. Give people the autonomy to use their experience that they have in the right positions. Very nice. I've got two wishes for the audience here. We've got 3 people here working in this field, and I always think it's a shame because I talk to a lot of SMEs, a lot of machine tool companies. You go there and you talk about AI, and a lot of people know a little bit and not a lot. Now, my proposal is this. You might say, not with me, but these are people who know about the doing, and people who know about the doing know how to fall down and get back up, and they also know what works well. And I think this is a subject that we should have much more dialogue on. There are 3 people here. I'm sure you can find out where their booths are. You have today and tomorrow. Go talk to these people, share your ideas, ask them what works and doesn't work, and I'm sure there will be some new project that people can think of. I'm sure that will work. Maybe one last comment. If you look at the huge amount of tools here, I'm sure we can at least give you a direction about where to go or an index, but I think that alone would help a lot of people because the things are so complex. We can tell you, okay, this is where you're going to fall flat in your nose if you do this. There are some small subjects. We maybe have tried things out. We know that, and for the rest, we can just give you a good recommendation. Great. Thank you for being here, people, today. Let's give them a big hand. Great panel discussion. Thank you. Martin, Tobias, Timo, thank you.